Kent, thank you so much for joining. I've been looking forward to this conversation for a long time. I know it's been on the books for, I think about a month or so. So
A little bit, yeah.
yeah, so super excited to have you here. So for people that don't know you, can you just maybe give a high level overview, who you are and what it is that you do?
Oh my gosh. How far back do you want me to go?
As far back as you want.
It was a dark and stormy day. No. I'm a lifetime Nova Scotian, lifetime Eastern Shore, born and raised in Sheet Harbor. Beautiful Sheet Harbor, I should say, in the outskirts of HRM. Spent 35 years living in that community, minus the 5 years I was in Montreal at university. Came back to Sheet Harbor from university and started working with my father in a small business, garbage, recycling, trucking, snow plowing, anything for a buck. Did
Right,
a lot of heavy equipment, and worked with him until I ultimately bought him out in 2010, 2011, and then sold the company to a third party in 2015. Moved from Sheet Harbor to Musquodoboit Harbor in 2014, spent a few years living in that community after my company sold in 2015. And as entrepreneurs tend to do, they look for other ways to be entrepreneurial.
For sure.
So after getting out of the garbage business, I got into real estate, formulated a company with a business partner, and we started buying inexpensive real estate, flipping it, after doing extensive renovations.
Nice.
And that company's evolved into rental properties now. Lived in Musquodoboit Harbor until 2022, and my partner sold her house in Enfield, and rather than come together in one house that one of us had already lived in, we decided it would be best for our families if we built a house. So built a house in Porters Lake in 2022. Moved on Friday the 13th of May, 2022.
Oh, geez.
Yeah.
No bad luck there?
No, luckily everything went well. And by that time, I had thrown my hat in the ring to be a politician. And so got elected for the first time in 2021 and been doing that job ever since, and was lucky enough to be asked by the Premier to be a member of his cabinet in September of 2023, and then reappointed after the election last fall. And that's pretty much a high-level summary of 46 years.
That's amazing. That's amazing, and still so much to come, I'm sure.
Yeah.
But that's so much to unpack there. Thank you very much for kind of laying that out. And so, like, you've done lots of stuff here. You're talking about business owners. You're talking about community. You're talking like education, and now politician. Is there like a single thread that kind of combines these things together for you?
Good luck. Good luck is really what has happened to me. I've ended up being in the right place at the right time, and I don't want to downplay the fact that just thinking about the business with my father, I did put a lot of thought into how the company was going to be run and how long I wanted to own it for, and I've now come to the realization that I don't want to ever be in a business without knowing what my exit strategy is. Right? Is it transfer of ownership to friends, family, kids, or is it sale to a third party? But certainly in the entrepreneurial side of things, I just wanted to know what's the end game here. And so for that garbage business, I knew that at some point in time I was gonna sell, and it just worked out. The timing worked out beautifully for that. And the other things that I've done, again, just putting myself out there and trying to have an extensive network. So after I sold the business, I was working really closely with the Chamber of Commerce in Musquodoboit Harbor. And I really took the opportunity there to meet as many people with decision-making ability as possible.
Yeah.
So I got involved with that chamber. That helped me get involved with the Halifax Chamber of Commerce, which led to me meeting a lot of the city councilors, which was nice at the time. And then got to know some other provincial politicians, and really just having that network that if something came up or a problem arose in whatever I was doing in life, I had someone to call and ask for advice or someone to ask for direction. So, but that was a conscious effort to try and expand the network, to have a pretty solid Rolodex of people that I could reach out to if and when I needed them.
Yeah.
The teaching, I got to teach for 6 months in the public school system, and that again was having a solid, strong network. And the vice principal of the school was actually someone I met through my daughter's, wasn't daycare, but wee bears, bookworms, the things that kids
Oh,
do.
really? Eh? Okay.
And she knew that I had sold the company. She knew that I wasn't regularly working. And she reached out and just said, would you like to teach phys ed
Yeah.
and French? And I thought she was joking. And I kind of just dropped everything that I was doing at the time to focus on being a public school teacher without having to go and get an education degree.
Yeah.
It was right place, right time, knowing the right people. But
Yeah. It's very interesting because I actually just posted a video that went live this morning, and it was kind of like 3 lessons I learned in my first year of making just under 100K in business. And one of the lessons, I think it was number 2, it was like your net worth, or your network is your net worth, or something like that. And it seems to be that a lot of entrepreneurs I talk to, that's the big thing. It's like, show me the people that you have in your network, and I'll show you how much money you can make and the opportunities you can have.
yeah, and those things, some happen organically and some you have to work at. And, living in Musquodoboit Harbor, you don't have the opportunity to have an extensive network unless you put the work in, unless you make decisions that put you in places where you can shake hands and sit at tables with people who can make decisions or at least guide you in the right direction.
Yeah. Yeah. That's amazing. That's amazing. So you mentioned earlier on about your father, and it's your father's business that you're working in. What role did that play for you growing up? Like, were you always in an entrepreneurial type of environment, or is it something that you kind of grew into for yourself?
Really interesting question. So obviously I had a mom and a dad. My father was a serial entrepreneur. So in Sheet Harbor, there are not a lot of options for any services, right? It's just a small town and the population isn't huge. And so my father started in business in 1967 delivering furnace oil.
Oh, really? Okay. Yeah.
So his father had been in the oil business as well. And so he started doing that and did so successfully for several years. And then in the late 70s, early 80s, the baby boomers in Sheet Harbor started getting to the age where they were building houses. And so there was more infrastructure builds taking place. And in almost every build, you need concrete. So my father saw that there was a need for someone to be delivering and supplying
Just has
concrete.
that eye to be able to see what the needs are and be able to fill it, eh?
Yeah.
Wow.
So in that small town, we were the folks that supplied concrete for almost every construction from the late 70s until the early 2000s when I came back from university. Because after the houses were built in the late 70s, 80s, every one of those houses started producing garbage. And
another need. That's
and
amazing.
it was a joke that my father used to say all the time, that garbage collection was recession proof, because everyone is, even if there is tough economic times, people are still producing garbage.
Yeah.
And it was also around the time in the mid 90s when we really got into garbage, when a couple of things happened. Halifax amalgamated. So now you had a larger entity that could afford to pay a little bit more.
And that's
for garbage.
Halifax coming in with Dartmouth? Is that how
No,
that
we
worked?
were on the Eastern Shore. We were part of Halifax County.
Oh,
And so
okay.
we had our own wardens and counselors. And then, like you've seen some other municipalities in the province, there's been some amalgamation to try and realize some economies of scale and savings by putting a bunch of municipalities together. So HRM did that in 95, 96. And then everything in the garbage side of things became a little more professional. So HRM put out legitimate contracts. Before it was, I don't want to say it was fly by night, but it was a smaller municipality that couldn't afford as much as HRM was doing. So they put a level of professionalism behind it. And then also in the mid 90s, the push for diverting waste from landfills became more and more prevalent.
It's like that with that big environmental movement, I think, in the 90s, eh?
Yeah, so you're taking plastics out of landfills, taking organics out of landfills, and trying to reduce the actual waste that's going to the landfill, diverting it away. Also, right around the same time, the refundables, the Resource Recovery Fund Board, where you take your cans and bottles, that started as well. So all of this to say, it started in concrete, built these houses, HRM amalgamates, more people producing garbage. We slowly got out of the concrete business and more so got into garbage collection, which ultimately became our number one revenue stream. But I mean, the original question was I always involved in, was entrepreneurial spirit in my household? Absolutely, 100%. So my father was always looking for different ways to generate revenue. And, after I bought him out, he went into septic pumping. So another form of waste that
Really?
always needs to be cleaned up. Now, the interesting thing was my mom, who is not entrepreneurial at all. She left Sheet Harbor to go to Acadia and get a teaching degree. And she came back and she taught at the local high school for 35 years.
Amazing.
Yeah. So I've got one parent who went to work every day in a union, working with her friends and
Right.
teaching every student in Sheet Harbor for 35 years. And then my father, who was just, like I said, serial entrepreneur, one thing after another.
So what was that like then in the early days? Because you went to university, then you got your degree, and then you went to work for your father. What was that like working in his company and kind of working your way up? And I wonder too, because family, I think it's probably some pros and cons sometimes when you're working with family. So can you maybe just walk me through a little bit of what it was like working there?
I anticipated this question, and I've talked about this a lot. It's family business is really, really challenging. And I don't want to make it sound so special that people can't understand it, but it's hard to relate to someone in a family business if you've not experienced it. Because what happens is, my parents and I lived very, very close to each other physically in Sheet Harbor. And so I would go over for meals, or they would come to my house, and there was no such thing as like a Thanksgiving dinner or a Christmas dinner that didn't end up talking about the business in one way or another. We weren't a huge business. We had 25 employees, but probably we were probably the third or fourth largest employer in Sheet Harbor at the time.
Wow.
And so we were always focused on what was going on in the business. And my father and I saw the business very, very differently.
Okay.
So we did not get along all that well. It was a struggle. Even towards the end, when I was purchasing the company from him, we needed my mother's intervention to help.
Oh, really?
We reached impasses, and I ultimately did have to. I gave him an ultimatum and said, "I'm either buying you out or I am leaving, and I'm going to go to work for someone else. It is your decision." Because I learned pretty quickly that as a purchaser, I couldn't force him to make that decision. He needed to make the decision to let go of the business a little bit. I'd gone to McGill. I had a business degree. I had things that I wanted to change. I had different direction that I wanted to go with the company in terms of, how we finance things, which lines of business we were in. Back the theme of being a serial entrepreneur, we were involved in so many different things that some were making decent money for the company and others were costing us money.
Okay.
And I thought, why would we continue to be in the concrete side of things when the concrete side of the business isn't made money in 5 years? That the garbage side of the company was making money, making good money every year.
Yeah.
So that was a tough decision in 2002 or 3 when I convinced him to sell the concrete side of the business. That was kind of his baby. That's where he'd started with oil.
Started everything.
Yeah. Right. He originally started in oil, but the business grew rapidly because of the concrete side of things. So it was tough for him to get on board with me. But when I showed him the numbers, it made it a little bit easier. But he was such a stubborn person.
Yeah.
So stubborn, really, really strong-willed. But yeah, there was always business conversations at whatever interaction we had. And we just had different visions for how the company should be run.
Yeah.
And there was a standing joke at one point in time where there was a point in time when my father and we each had a final say, but his came after mine.
Right. The final say. Yeah.
Right.
So is it because, did you have more of a growth mindset and you wanted to, was it your education, or what was it specifically that you wanted to do differently, that you wanted to take, the company in that different direction? And was it just his stubbornness or just wanting to stick with what he knew? What was it that was causing that?
He wouldn't believe the numbers, even when I showed them the numbers. So I didn't necessarily want to grow. I wanted to become more efficient at what we were doing. So
right.
You're right. There would have been more opportunities for us to grow in the garbage business, and we did actually. So we started in just our little section of HRM, and then we grew to the adjacent municipality the other way, away from downtown Halifax to municipality of the District of Guysborough. It's where Sherbrooke Village is and that side of things. But we ended up getting the garbage collection contract for there, and that was a little bit outside of our comfort zone. And so that was a nice piece of growth, and it was a nice little contract. But really what I wanted to do after I bought him out was just get really efficient at the things we were good at and I wanted to completely carve off the things that were losing us money.
Yeah.
And had so many arguments with him about, if just because the wheels are turning on a truck doesn't mean that you're making money.
Right. Or that you're going down the right direction. So, I mean, if you're really good at one thing and then you can take that and then make it so much more efficient, and you could make, I would imagine, so much more money, and probably even doing less amount of work, in the sense that it's a well-oiled machine, right?
We certainly did make more money with some efficiencies, but also trying to maximize the equipment that we had, maximizing the human resources that we had. So when I came back, when I purchased in 2011, we hired like licensed mechanics. We used to take a lot of our gear and outsource the repairs. And I thought, well, we've got a couple of guys who are from this community that have their ticket, their heavy commercial mechanic ticket. Why not spend the money, have them work here? They're contributing to the local economy. One of them had been working away for 16 years, and I convinced him to come home and work in Sheet Harbor.
Yeah.
So we started doing more of our own repairs. But then when our shop was free, I was like, well, why don't we get our heavy commercial motor vehicle inspection, and then we can start filling some of that down shop time.
Right.
Because every other trucking company that was in the neighborhood, they would have to take their truck out of Sheet Harbor in order to get work done, out of Sheet Harbor to get their annual motor vehicle inspection. So we started booking some revenue that way.
Yeah. So you're saying around 2011, 2012 is when you bought it from your father, and then you sold it around 2015. So what was your plan after you bought it? And then, like, did you actually implement your plan and exit how you wanted to exit? Like, what was that like?
Kind of. I had a 10-year plan when I came back in 2001, when I was working with my father. I think in 10 years, if I can buy him out and then sell to a third party, that is what I'd like to be. I knew that I didn't want to be in the garbage business my entire life.
Right.
It was a great learning experience. Great to get to be the boss of a smaller team, 20, 25 people, where of course everyone knows everyone, and we had fun Christmas parties, and it was a nice culture in our company. But I just knew it wasn't what I was going to do for my entire life.
Yeah.
So it took me 14 years to complete my 10-year plan.
That's not too bad, though. Most people start a 10-year plan and they just never even finish.
Yeah. No, but I'm pretty proud of how it all played out. I mean, notwithstanding the fact that it took the full 12 months. Like, we started our negotiation in January of 2011 and finished it in December of 2011 on me purchasing the company from my father. There were
That long, eh?
Yeah. It was a long process. But then once I finally, we signed all the paperwork and I had acquired it from him. That's when I really put the plan into action. Okay.
Yeah.
I've got as little time as I want to do as quickly as possible in making sure that the finances, the books look good, because that's ultimately what someone's going to make a decision on, whether or not they're going to buy or not. We had just renewed our contract with HRM, which was 60% of the annual revenue was the contract with HRM. And the other thing that was really vital to selling was cleaning up the yard. So you can imagine that my father being in business from 1967 till I bought him out in 2011 in the same yard, there was a lot of junk. There was stuff that of that generation where if something broke, you didn't throw it away. You set it aside.
Just in case.
We might need a part off of that.
Yeah.
We might need to use that at some point in time, or they're not making things like that any longer. We're going to keep it.
Yeah.
And it didn't present well.
Yeah.
It didn't, I wasn't proud driving in the
And
yard.
did you ever even have to use any of that stuff? No.
From time to time, there would have been,
But not really worth it.
No. Especially as we got newer equipment and newer gear, we weren't relying on the remainder parts like my father did earlier in his career. So even just taking that time to clean the yard up and load up the scrap bin and make the yard look more presentable, that took almost a full summer of
I imagine
trying to get all of our regular work done that we'd made money with, and then taking the guys away from their regular jobs to help me clean the yard up was an ordeal. It was a task.
Yeah. What was it like, your relationship with your father after the buyout? Because you said it was maybe a little contentious or whatever when you were in the business, but afterwards, was it everything's okay now? Now it's over. Now we can go back to no.
Nope. I would have liked for it to have been that way, but he wouldn't sell me the land when he sold me the company. So he owned part of the property where I operated the company out of, and he ended up building a new office on his land. And he started,
oh boy,
yeah. And so he got out of our office, which was fine. I didn't kick him out. He made a decision that he was going to build his own office, and he started investing in the septic pumping business.
Okay.
So he bought a septic truck, and he hired an employee, and that's what he wanted to do. And inevitably, though, he would still need things from our company.
Course,
So if his truck broke down or if he needed work done, then he would come to us. So that part was nice. But no, there was still. I don't want to portray it as though we didn't like each other. We just struggled working together. And even after I bought him out, like I tried not to talk business with him after after I bought him out, but it was tough because he always wanted to know what was going on and have input. And
that's the way it is.
It was tough for him to let go.
Yeah,
it was tough for him to let go for sure.
Yeah, my Andrea, my wife, her uncle, he said to me for business, he's like, he was a pretty successful accountant, and he says, no matter what you do, never go in business with your wife. He's like, stay away. So you tell he had terminless relationship, I guess, with his wife or ex-wife, I guess you could say. So yeah. So that was pretty funny.
It's not for everyone, that's for sure.
Yeah. The process of selling your company to another party, I guess, did that go a lot smoother than it was when you were purchasing from your father?
It did, because I had this plan. It was pretty proactive on my part, and so proactive that I put together a tender document. And so my uncle in Ottawa is a very successful accountant. And he had worked on mergers and acquisitions. He had worked on insolvency and bankruptcy with Ernst & Young. And so he came and gave me some advice and said, here's what you should do. Put together a document that is two parts, that looks at the overall functionality of the company, like the key employees, the work that you do, what you're involved in, contracts that you have right now, and then full stop. Next one is a 5 years worth of financial statements, and show people how strong the books are of the company. And so I sent that out to the people that I knew in the garbage industry that I thought might be interested in buying. And I sent it to 4 different companies, and a nice little cover letter said, gentlemen, my company's for sale, and here's the process.
Yeah. And
we'll be accepting bids until this day, and send them to my lawyer. And so that was in May of 2015.
Of the 4, how many responded?
None. It's a good story, but it's a none. But on the day that it was supposed to close, the tender was supposed to close, I went to my lawyer's office and we were waiting. Nobody responded. But while I was at my lawyer's office, I got a phone call from the representative from the Dexter Group, the municipal group of companies, Regroup. Most people would know it as. Yeah. And he said, listen, we love your company. We don't like this process at all.
Oh, really?
They didn't like that I was calling the shots, that I had sent out this tender document and said, here's the minimum starting bid. We're going to close on, we're going to accept tenders until this day. They didn't like that at all. Yeah. They're a company that I believe, and now knowing them a little bit better, they like to be in charge. They like to be driving the bus.
Sure.
So even though they didn't submit anything that day, he said, if you don't get anything, call me back and we'll work together. We'll work outside of this process. So that's exactly what happened. So like I said, that was at the end of May. And then I subsequently had a dozen or so meetings with this one gentleman who was the representative for Regroup. And by the end of the summer, we had a deal in place. And then it closed on September 30th, 2015. Oh,
that's awesome. Was it any different than your original idea and what you had laid out? Or
they had some unique terms that they wanted. They really worked with me because I had a number in mind that I was really hoping for.
Yeah.
And they got incredibly close to that number. They just couldn't justify certain amounts that they just weren't comfortable. But I had 49 pieces of equipment at the time.
Yeah, it's good assets.
Some, garbage trucks are not.
They're not cheap.
They're not 20,000. They're 220,000.
Yeah, yeah.
So I had 49 pieces of equipment, but there were some that they didn't want. So it ended up there were about 10 pieces of equipment that they didn't want, and they said, "Here you go. Look, we'll pay you for the company almost exactly what you're looking for, but we don't want these 10 pieces of equipment. So why don't you take those off the books and sell them to another company, put them in another company's name, and then go ahead and sell them and, make a few more dollars there, and that'll get you really close to what you were looking for."
Yep.
And that's ultimately what happened. So there were just some older pieces of equipment that didn't match with what they wanted to do. And they were great to work with. They ended up hiring me for 6 months after the sale to transition and help their new manager.
Perfect. Yeah.
And that went so smoothly that I think they hired me for 6 months with the intention that once the new manager was up to speed, that I wouldn't be required. So I only spent about 3 months working in the office with this manager. Got paid for 6 months, but the manager they hired was incredible. She knew the ins and outs of the garbage business.
Yeah. But it sounds like a testament to you, though, having all your ducks in order by going through this process of getting everything prepared, that you just knew everything inside and out, and you also had documentation you could probably provide.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And I would say that was a key piece, like let's just say the record keeping of my father's era was different than the record keeping in my era. So yes, we had like all the ducks were in a row, all the T's were crossed, I's were dotted. But like I said, real testament to the person that they hired to manage Eastern Shore Cartage. And actually, 2 years after I sold, I went back to work with them for another 5 or 6 months when they transitioned this manager to another role. They needed some help, and that was just before I went into the teaching gig, and I had some time to go and help them, and I would do it again. Well, maybe not right now, but I do like the municipal group of companies. I think they're a strong Nova Scotian company with 3,000 or 4,000 employees. They were really, really good to work with.
Yeah, right on. Oh, that's amazing. That's a fantastic story. Lots of takeaways there for people. And I think from what you're saying there too is one very easy takeaway is that even if you're just starting out your business, it's probably a good idea just to make sure that you keep your books in order and make sure you write down your processes so that in case whenever you want to make that exit or what have you, you have that stuff kind of already ready to go, and it's just something in your pocket that you can have.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
100%. Yeah.
Yeah. Right on. That's amazing. So after you finished all of that, did you go directly into teaching or did you go into consulting? Because I know you started your own.
I did. So I would say that's probably one of my failures. Or it didn't work out as I had hoped.
The consulting
Side of things. So I did incorporate a company called BDE Initiatives, and I'm a big proponent of the phrase "today's going to be the best day ever." So that's
that's BDE a great phrase. I love that.
Is BDE, and my goal there, my thought was that I would try to find family-run businesses that needed some outside help from someone who had been through family-run businesses.
Right. And not even just a family-run business that has gone just all sunshine and rainbows, that has gone through the trenches and had the arguments and the fights or what have you. Yeah.
Yeah. So like I said earlier, it's hard to relate to family-run businesses if you haven't been in it. And I know that you could say that about any situation, but it is unique. So my hopes would at the time was that I could monetize my experience and be a resource for people in family-run businesses, help them with the things that I had learned in my time. But I found out pretty quickly that I wasn't really good at new client acquisition. I could meet and talk to people and share the story but then closing the deal, I don't know if I was shy or embarrassed or whatever it was. It just didn't work out as well as I had hoped. And then it didn't really, I don't want to say it didn't matter, because I then fell into this real estate career with my business partner, Mike. And so that took more of my time, and I wasn't making any money off with BDE.
Yeah. And you're not even really having to dealing with clients there too. You can just kind of do your thing and put your head down and get to work.
Right.
Yeah. So that's interesting. Did you find that, was it an issue with communicating what your value would be to those clients, or was it really that maybe there wasn't really like a market fit for that type of offer?
I think that it was tough for for entrepreneurs in family businesses to pay for someone to tell them that what was going on with their business. I think a lot of folks either knew that they had some family dynamics that needed to be massaged, but didn't want to outlay any cash to try and deal with it. And it could have been too that they felt like they could work it through themselves without an outside factor, without outside help. But generally, entrepreneurs can be a little bit stubborn as well.
Yeah, we'll put it nicely.
I know how to do this, and who's this kid gonna
I was tell
30,
me what to do,
right? I was 35, 36 at the time, so in dealing with trucking companies, which is what I really knew, most of the time you had a 60 or 70-year-old guy who was running the business, and he'd been running it for 30 or 40 years, and you're not going to come in here and tell me how to do things differently, because I know
what's going on,
right?
Exactly.
I know my business, and I know what's going on.
Yeah.
And then you had a son or a daughter who was trying to make changes or trying to improve the business, and it didn't always work out.
Yeah, you had all the experience in the world, but yet, it's so difficult because if people aren't willing to listen, I mean, what can you do?
Right.
Yeah, that's crazy. Okay, so I was going to ask you in terms of what the challenges were, but I think the challenge for themselves is even just for businesses to get out of their own head and just trying to be open to being able to, I don't even know how to say it, but open to be able to take outside input from people that do know better, so that you could learn faster and not make the same mistakes. But I guess some people they're going to go through it.
I learned quickly that not as many people wanted my services as I thought they would. And then, like I said, the real estate opportunity presented itself, and really wanted to, my business partner's a great guy, and we became good friends and had a lot of fun flipping houses.
Yeah. Was the partnership what kind of skills were you looking for? Somebody that was complementing your skills, or was it just like a buddy that you had that you're just, hey, let's figure out what we can do together?
So great question. Because I did have pretty serious discussions with a guy on the Eastern Shore who was already into real estate and had a bit of a name, but for whatever reason it just didn't work out. And then through my involvement with the Chamber of Commerce, I became good friends with the only lawyer on the Eastern Shore.
Oh, okay.
So his name's Michael, and he can be reached at. No, I'm just kidding. He's a good dude, and he and I not only became pretty good friends, but you're spot on with the skill sets that he brought to the table. So when you're buying and selling houses, one of the bigger expenses can be real estate and lawyer fees,
the legal fees,
fees. Mm-hmm. So when you're business partners with a lawyer, he looks after all of those transactions, things that I didn't have to worry about. Discounted rate, obviously, for our company. And he's also pretty handy, but it just ended up that...
Oh, really? A handy lawyer? Okay, that's awesome.
Yeah. So we flipped a few houses, and then
Were you guys both just doing it yourselves in terms of going into the houses and repairing, or were you hiring out contractors to do most of the work?
The big things like framing, we didn't frame, but once we got the house framed, I would take over and do all the insulating, vapor barriering, putting in the heat recovery and ventilation, the HRV system, outsource plumbing, outsource electrical, obviously outsource drywall. And then I did all the painting and the trim work and all those things. And whenever Michael was available, he would come in and lend another hand.
Oh, that's amazing. That's amazing. I love the whole house flipping through. Andrew and I think it was back in, it's probably 2005 or 4 or something like that. We were thinking of getting into that, which we probably should have, because we could have made quite a bit of money back then. But anyways, it's just really fascinating. The idea that you can take an old house, and I just love architecture as well too. You can take an old house, restore it, and then provide a nice family unit for, a family that, wants a nice place to live, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's really cool. All your past experience that you've had from your father's business and then your business and selling it, was that instrumental in and even your failure with your consulting company, was that instrumental in your success as like a real estate developer? Do you think you've gained all these skills to be able to lead up to that success?
I think a couple of things with real estate, like persistency. So number one, you have to know the rules of any game that you're playing. So when we started doing this, we came in off the street and started building a house and didn't really understand or do enough research on what inspections were going to take place along the way. So there are physical inspections. I think that there are 7 inspections that take place when you're building a new house. And so in trying to be as good at this as I could be, I made it my job to get to know the HRM inspectors And I made it my job to make sure I was on site every time that they were there doing an inspection. And I asked a million questions. And I learned almost everything on how to do things efficiently from the HRM home inspectors who would come in and, one of the first inspections once the house is framed is the pre-drywall. And so they're looking for a million different things. And as a newbie at this, I didn't know what they were looking for. So I followed Catherine around and I asked Catherine a million questions and learned so much from her. And that saved me so much time in every other build that we did after that. So, I mean, I think that's just good, solid advice for any one of your viewers here to say, whatever you're doing, you got to make sure you know the rules of the game. And just listening and trying to, not come into it with through any lens of arrogance or I know anything. I played as dumb as I possibly could. I probably didn't have to play that hard because I really didn't know. I didn't know a lot of what I was doing, but I knew that I enjoyed working with my hands. I enjoyed doing this work. So Catherine educated me on how to make sure that I do it so that it makes your job easier. And I will say, putting that work in and spending that time did make the inspections easier as they move forward because inspectors got to know that, okay, Kent and Mike do things the right way. They care about their reputation. They're not slapping anything together. They're doing it the proper way. So that went a long way in a little bit of currency, a little bit of inspection currency, I'll say.
Well, it's pride. There's pride in the work that you do and you want to do a good job, but it also goes back to what you're saying about networking and finding, like you were saying, I'm going into those inspectors, kind of probably befriending them, maybe, I don't know, coming up with some coffee and donuts when they're doing the inspection, but asking questions, being really interested and genuine and wanting to learn. And I'm sure you probably have those connections for life now, I would imagine. You're probably still friends with those guys. And
I've used some contacts at HRM in my current job just because I met them, knew them, and a constituent might present with an issue that I know one of these HRM people would know the answer to. So I'd keep them in my phone and use that network.
I can't imagine what your phone is like in terms of all the different contacts and connections that you have. That's amazing. That's amazing. So can you maybe, like, just kind of wrapping up all of your entrepreneurial experience, if you can go back in time and give yourself almost some advice when you're starting out, what would that advice be?
Great question. I think it would start by saying, have patience. Make sure that you have the patience that you need in order to get through the next few years. Mainly, I'm thinking about dealing with my father. Like, I learned a lot about patience dealing with him. I think a really important lesson to learn, and not just for entrepreneurs, but just in general, is, you can never, ever understand what motivates other people. And I thank my father for teaching me that lesson, because there were plenty of times when he and I were interacting and I couldn't understand what his motivation was. And then ultimately came to the conclusion that I don't have to understand, nor will I ever understand his motivation. So patience and consistency. So something so simple that I used to do at Eastern Shore Cartage, I started doing a monthly newsletter. And I did it at the end of every month. I did a newsletter for the team, just highlighted what was going on, what contracts we were bidding for, some niceties in there. People had birthdays. And I stopped doing it in one summer because we just got busy and I didn't do it. And then I had 2 or 3 employees, members of the team, say, what happened to the newsletter? You're not doing that anymore? And I didn't even realize that people liked it.
People were listening or reading.
Yeah, they looked forward to it. And I had been consistent with it for 12 or 15 months, and then stopped. And I quickly brought it back when I realized that people were interested in it. And I mean, in the lines of consistency and the line of the newsletter is, I found it really, really beneficial to over communicate with members of my team. And I'm not talking about giving away, proprietary information or going into the bank account and showing them things like that, but helping people understand why we were making decisions, why we were going in certain directions, why we were investing in this and not that, went a long way to making the team feel like they were part of something bigger than just being part of Eastern Shore Cartage. I was really, really proud when we won a designation called an employer of choice. And that was all the employees were surveyed, and you had to get 80% approval rating from the employees. And if you did that, then you could be designated as an employer of choice. And we got that, and then it was a nice feeling.
Yeah. Is that part of being a good leader? Is that you have that kind of respect for the people that are working for you and with you, and that you have that ability to be able to share things for them that are going to help them understand the mission, understand the vision, and also, I would imagine, help them grow themselves as individuals?
I think so. And I think that, I think people want to feel included. Generally, people want to feel like they're part of something. So part of a team at work, or part of a sports team, or part of an organization, or volunteer. People want to feel connected. And, I, again, didn't go in so far as to opening up the bank account to show everyone, but I did try to share as much as I possibly could about what the company was doing. And I think it worked. I think it worked.
So I think this is actually a really good segue to kind of maybe transition now from your, private sector work or whatever, and going into the public sector. Was there anything that you experienced in your, business and everything that you've done that had kind of led you towards wanting to go into office and run for public office?
I have always had a desire to be a public servant.
Okay.
My father used to say that I told him when I was 10 years old that someday I was going to be an MLA.
Okay.
So it's always been in there. I've always been interested in politics.
Politics and entrepreneurship.
Yeah. So my father was relatively politically connected, and growing up in Sheet Harbor, we had two channels. We had CBC and ATV, and when there was an election, it was always on. That's was on for the whole day, for the whole evening, just watching the election results. So. I don't know how many, I'm sure a lot of kids grew up that way, but for some reason, and it spoke to me, and it's something that I wanted to do, to try and, the cliche of leaving the place better than I found it. It is a cliche, but when you get into it, you realize that you can do a lot to help people. And I'm happy to be carrying on that work of trying to help people. I have found, though, a little side story, it's really hard to be proactive in this job because there's so many reactive things that happen, so many phone calls, so many emails, so many walk-ins to the office, that people looking for help. Like, I've got a list that I keep, I just called it my priority board, to try and keep me focused on the 5 or 6 things that I'm actively working on outside of responding to emails and responding to phone calls and responding to everything. But yeah, I think I've always had an interest in politics, and always had a desire to serve, and the cliche of trying to leave the Eastern Shore a little bit better than I found it.
Well, it's not so much of a cliche, especially if it's true and it actually comes from the heart. So there wasn't like a specific aha moment of like, this happened. It was like, that's it. I need to go into politics because I need to fix this and this and this.
Well, it's really funny. Like, yes, when I was 10, I told my father I wanted to be an MLA. But then when I first met with the premier in 2019, he describes getting involved in politics as one of two things happens. Either you get pissed off, or you get asked. And I was in a unique situation where both of those happened to me.
True, yeah.
So I wasn't pleased with the local representation that we had on the Eastern Shore, and the premier's team asked me if I would consider running.
Yeah, and then you did.
I did.
So
I did.
That's amazing. So what about the difference I kind of want to get into the mindset you had to have from shifting from being into business and into politics. What was that like? Did you have to really kind of change your mindset, or was it similar?
No, you really, really have to change your mindset. So you would know this, and your viewers would know this. As an entrepreneur, the buck stops with you. You get to make decisions, and you get to act on them right away if you want. So if I own a private company and I want to buy a new garbage truck, and that garbage truck is $300,000, I can decide that today, and I can go to the bank tomorrow, and I can sign the paperwork, and I can make that decision. And then you get into government, and it's really become more prevalent for me as minister that I think entrepreneurially. I would like to be efficient. I would like to get things done. And for the right reasons, there are processes in place to make sure that checks and balances within government are done appropriately. And that, everything, there are multiple layers that you need to go through in order to get to that decision to buy a garbage truck. And sometimes someone like me can be very frustrated with the speed or lack of speed with which some departments can move.
Yeah.
And I don't want this to be construed as critical of my government, because I'm pleased with the work that we are doing and pleased with the Premier's message. You know, there's a reason that the boss says more faster, because he wasn't happy with the speed at which things were moving. But I do find as a minister, there are certain times when I say to my deputy minister, why can't we just do that?
Yeah.
And then my deputy will rightly give me 4 or 5 reasons why we can't just do that.
Yeah. It seems like it's this frustrating balance, perhaps, of wanting to get stuff done as an entrepreneur, but then it's important to have those checks and balances so that people in government can't just come in and say like, oh, we're just going to do the X, Y, and Z, and then
I think that I think some governments have gone a little too far with bureaucracy and slowing things down a little bit. And luckily for me, the department that I'm minister of, we're relatively small. We have 82 members of our team. And so we are able to, we have become more efficient. We have sped some things up. And, we're going to continue to do the best that we can in fisheries and aquaculture. But I do tend to look at decisions in government through an entrepreneurial lens. And I just wish we could do a little bit more entrepreneurially.
Yeah. So I guess that's one thing that I was going to ask you about, the kind of maybe shift in the lens of how you have to bring an entrepreneurial shift or entrepreneurial mindset into how you kind of approach making decisions and making policy. So it's like you're trying to really kind of bring that, let's try to get things done better and faster.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And I'm lucky to have the great deputy minister that I have who understands how fast I want to move, but then keeps me balanced with what we have to do before we can make a decision.
Yeah. So I'm new in business and I don't have very much experience with, interacting with governments and trying to do kind of grand things because I'm just a solo entrepreneur. But there are people that say that when they're trying to do certain things in their business, that they're kind of running up with regulatory process or whatever that are getting in their way. So you being on the other side now, you were an entrepreneur and now you're a businessman. How can you, do you see things differently now that you're kind of on the other side? Can you talk to businesses and say you know what, we actually can't move that quickly because we have to make sure that, this side of the aisle kind of gets taken care of?
That is problematic. And you're right. There are some areas where things are slow and it can and does cause a lot of frustration. As I mentioned in the last answer, the speed at which our government is moving, I've heard directly from high up public servants that they haven't seen this level of decision making, the swift decision making in their time with government. So I'm proud of that, right? Because the reputation that government, capital G government has is that it's where, good projects go to die and they slow down and bogged down in so much red tape. And I definitely, I'm keenly aware that our government is speeding things up. And the Premier is on record multiple times where we've made decisions that didn't go exactly as we planned, and the Premier was forced to change course or revert to that decision, and he's apologized for it, but says, listen, we're trying to move quickly, and sometimes when you move quickly, sometimes things can get missed, and we've recoursed, replotted the GPS a couple of times on a couple of decisions. But listen, there's a couple of things that come up regularly just in terms of development. People on the Eastern Shore are trying to deal with HRM, building permits or development agreements. I think that there's some work to be done with that side of things. And I know that there's some delays with some of our departments that play a role there. And as MLA, we try to communicate efficiently and effectively with the appropriate minister and try to use our networks to figure out ways to smooth things out and make things faster. Because, obviously one of the biggest topics over the last few years is the housing crisis. And I think we all levels of government need to be pulling at the same end of the rope in getting developments approved and making sure we have the labor force that can build what we need to build. But it's certainly apparent for someone like me who's been an entrepreneur and now in politics that the two just don't jive all that well together.
What do you think are the biggest gaps in between the philosophy and the thinking of entrepreneurs versus politicians?
I think entrepreneurs just want to get stuff done, and we'll worry about the details later. Like, let's just make a decision. Let's get something started. Let's get rolling, and let's start making some money. And then, whereas government is more so, all right, we have this idea. Let's worry about the details right now.
Yeah, yeah.
Let's
think about that for
right.
However long.
Let's do the appropriate amount of public consultation. Which, if you told an entrepreneur that they need to do public consultation,
well, they're going to lose their minds.
It's they're an entrepreneur for a reason, because they want to make decisions. They want to get things done. But obviously, respecting processes, there's lots of places and lots of decisions that require public consultation, and of course we need to respect that. But there are efficiencies to be had in speeding up yeses.
Yeah.
And figuring out ways to get to the yes instead of always looking for ways to get to the no.
Yeah, no kidding. Is there any ways that you can think of that we can kind of bridge the gap, how entrepreneurs and politicians can maybe work closely together?
Well, listen, I can speak about the Department of Fisheries and Aquaculture.
Okay.
So there's a really great project that we've done in the municipality of the district of Argyll. So without going into a long, involved story, but I'll tell you, essentially, we've made it more efficient for applications for shellfish and marine plant aquaculture leases to be approved. So under the conventional process, a person would come in with an idea and a location on where they'd like to grow oysters, let's say.
Yeah.
And that process would start when they submitted the application, and it would take 2 or 3 years, and they would go through the process, and then they would get a decision, whether it's approved or not approved. And the change that we made is that we looked at the Lobster Bay in Argyll and looked at 53 different sites that could be pre-approved. So essentially, we took those sites, put them through the same process that we would as if someone had applied for it.
Yeah.
And we've pre-approved these 53 sites. So all the hard work, all the challenging work in the approval has been done at the beginning.
Right.
And so now when someone comes in and applies for one of these sites, a lot of the work has already been done, so we can get an approval much more swiftly. Yeah. So that's one example that's near and dear to my heart, because it started 4 or 5 years ago under a previous minister in a previous government. But I got to be the one that announced it and said, this is good for aquaculture in Nova Scotia. It's good for economic development. It's good for the municipality of the district of Argyll. And it does look at aquaculture through a little bit more of an entrepreneurial lens, in that we can promote economic development faster than if we use the conventional approval method.
Yeah, yeah. And I imagine in Halifax and even in Nova Scotia, I'm not very familiar with this, may I'll ask you, like aquaculture is probably a really big part of our economy, I would imagine, right?
It isn't, but it has the potential to be.
Oh, okay.
It has the potential to be. So aquaculture, we have about 260 some approved sites in the province for either marine finfish or oysters or kelp. And there's opportunities for growth there.
Okay.
Yeah.
Interesting.
I could nerd on aquaculture for a while, but it's not an aquaculture show.
Yeah, no, for sure, for sure. So you've gone through this incredible journey with us today from our business, and like you said, 10 years old, I wanted to go into politics, and you've done all that, done teaching. It's just amazing. So this is maybe very difficult to answer, but is there like one single valuable skill set that you would say is that you've learned throughout this whole thing?
It is hard to answer that question. I'm very cognizant of not being boastful, not bragging. At the end of the day, I try to put my head down and do good work. And I've been lucky with the network that I've been able to amass.
I like what you're saying there about just putting your head down and doing good work and just wanting to be, I don't know, I really resonate, like making the world a better place than when it was before. Right. And then if you just do focus on that, it's almost like the results just happen.
And the proof is in the pudding. I again, don't want to be boastful, don't want to like talk myself up, but I'm proud of the life that I've created. And it's some of it is good luck and some of it is good management. And I'm fortunate to be where I am, and it's not lost on me.
Yeah. Do you have any plans after politics?
I'm going to have a lake house somewhere where I sit with my feet up and no.
Yeah.
My fiance and I, so I just got engaged not too long ago. Thank you. We purchased a small piece of property in just outside Sheet Harbor on a lake. And so without joking too much, we will eventually build a cottage down there.
Yeah.
And I can see myself just continuing to volunteer for community organizations. So Sheet Harbor is, again, near and dear to my heart, even though I don't live there any longer. It was my hometown. It is my hometown. And so when we move back to this cottage that we build someday, I could see myself volunteering with the Sheet Harbor Chamber of Commerce, being involved, using the network that will continue to amass to help Sheet Harbor advance and grow. There's a lot of good plans for Sheet Harbor, and I'd love to be helpful in making them come to fruition.
Do you ever see yourself getting back into the entrepreneurial journey, like even starting something from scratch? And
well, not right now. I shouldn't say no, but the real estate company that I have with Michael, everything we own is for sale right now. So we've been trying to sell for the last year.
Just like kind of liquidate and everything and kind of get out of the game?
Yes.
Okay. So
again, going into something, knowing what the exit strategy is. So Mike and I had originally planned to own the company for 10 years. We grew really, really quickly and acquired, we built a 16 unit building and then acquired 2 small apartment buildings in Sheet Harbor. Okay. And that, like, we just grew faster. The opportunities presented themselves. And, but with Mike being the only lawyer on the Eastern Shore, he's incredibly busy.
I can imagine. Yeah.
I am incredibly happy with the job that I have, and I would love to keep it for the foreseeable future.
Yeah.
So we just decided that it was the right time to sell. So if we can be successful in selling Senior Solutions Development Group Limited, then I will make another decision at that point in time. But I enjoy playing golf.
Okay.
Do you play?
I don't play golf. I'm a hockey player.
Okay.
Yeah.
Sorry about that. So once the political job is over, I would love to just spend some time on a golf course.
It is great being outdoors, being with some buddies or whatever, just hitting the ball around. So that's when I do play golf, that's what I love the most. Not so much when my ball always goes in the rough, in the sand, or in the water. But yeah, no, it's a great thing to do. So kind of maybe wrapping things up here a little bit. So for the entrepreneur that's listening here and they're feeling a little bit stuck, or they feel like they don't know what to do, or they maybe want to start, what kind of advice would you be able to give them that can maybe help them, get off their butt, I guess, and kind of get moving?
I mean, if they're already quasi-established, I would sit down and write some things down. Like, why am I doing this? And
figuring out your why.
Yeah. What's my goal here? And then talk to someone, right? Like, talk to someone who's a mentor, or someone who's been in the business that you're in. Like, reach out to you, reach out to me, and have a conversation. Because I found that when I got a little bit stuck, even though I had a good idea of what I was trying to do, there were a couple of really key people in the waste industry that I could go to and say, Jeff, like, what do I do here? And why can't I get past this hurdle? And not only was it nice to have that person in my network, it was someone a little older who had been through family business, been through experiences. So I didn't want to have that resource and not use it. And it was tough the first time, because I was like, is he going to want to tell me is he going to tell me his secrets? Right? Because he was quasi a competitor, but not really. We were both in the same thing.
Yeah.
But I just ripped the Band-Aid off and had a beer with him, and he gave me some good, solid advice. So I would say that, Odom, like, write down your why. Why am I doing this, and does it make sense? And then talk to someone.
Yeah. I've had some people tell me that it's really hard to go out and find mentors. Is there any advice you can give to trying to get some, because especially if someone's more experienced than you and they're really, really busy, what could be maybe good advice to give to try to get your handle on one of these mentors?
I love connecting with local chambers of commerce. And, the Halifax Chamber of Commerce is a huge networking opportunity. It's priced accordingly, so it's not free to join. But if there are other small town chambers, like in Sheet Harbor, we have a Chamber of Commerce. In Musquodoboit Harbor, we have a Chamber of Commerce. I know around the province, there are tons of other local chambers of commerce and really, really good resources,
Yeah.
especially if they're connected with the Atlantic Chamber of Commerce. There are some great resources available through there. And I don't want to be a commercial for them, but if you're in business and you're trying to meet people, create a network, it's a great place to start.
Yeah, right on. I think that's fantastic advice. And I know for me, I know a lot of my colleagues are in the Chamber of Commerce, but I myself haven't been in, but I know I need to get in to start, building that network and making those connections. Yeah, absolutely. If people do want to get in touch with you, where can they find you?
Listen, I'll give my personal email, jbkentsmith@gmail.com. Pretty simple.
Perfect.
James Brian Kent Smith, JB Kent Smith. And yeah, I'll happily help use my network to help your listeners.
That's amazing. That's amazing. Kent, thank you so much for this. It was an absolute pleasure speaking to you and getting to know your story. It was amazing.
Well, happy to do it. Thank you.